Something that I've seen so many times is if someone's right before a breakthrough, they don't necessarily feel like they're right before a breakthrough. They actually feel the opposite. Like, I've tried everything. What else is there to try? I'm at a loss. I'm just frustrated. I'm sick of myself. These are the kind of thoughts that I've found usually happen before my breakthroughs. And I think the reason why that is because once we feel like we've exhausted a certain number of options, or we've made a certain number of efforts, or we've been disappointed a certain number of times, is we reach a threshold where it then forces us to think outside of the box that we were in. And I'm sure you've heard that Albert Einstein quote that we can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created the problem. And when it comes to food issues, whether it's binge eating, emotional eating, compulsive overeating, food addiction, whatever label you've placed on how you've been struggling with food, when we can think outside of the box that we've been in, that's when new paths start to open up. So, in this episode, what I want to really give you is new ways and angles to think about things. And you might have heard some of this before, maybe in a generic sense, but I want to very specifically apply it to what you've been struggling with so you can start to make changes and start to think outside of the box that you've been in to forge a new path. Because maybe what you've done so far hasn't worked, not because you're a failure. And that's what so many of us tell ourselves, right? Because we do take responsibility for things. So if we give something our all and then it doesn't work, we take that personally. That means I'm the failure. But what if it wasn't that you actually failed, but rather you're being called to your next level? You're being called to your next phase or your next chapter of your evolution. And what's gotten you to this point isn't going to be what gets you to the next point. That there's something else that you're meant to learn or grow from, or a lesson that you need to graduate from in order to be able to put this behind you. That you're being called to step into the version of yourself that has outgrown this pattern. Oh, that's why I renamed the podcast Outgrow Binge Eating, because something that I realized as I've been reflecting on these last 20 years is I didn't conquer this. I mean, at first, it definitely felt like a fight. For 10 years, it felt like a fight. But after I made these shifts that I'm going to be teaching you, it transformed and it no longer became a fight. It became a growth process. And as I continued to grow in certain ways, those old patterns started to fall away as I was outgrowing them. Even if I tried, I couldn't binge in the way that I used to. I couldn't eat in the way that I used to. Now that doesn't even sound appealing. That actually sounds painful. I don't even think I could physically do what I used to do. So that's a very different place to be because if we're constantly vigilant, we constantly have to be aware of our triggers and we constantly think we could be knocked off our equilibrium at any second, that's not peace. And I don't think that's even real growth. I don't walk around worrying that one day all of this is going to go away. Whereas before, even if I felt like I had some success, like I went a certain number of days without binging, or I went a while without eating sugar, it all still felt like a house of cards. This could go away at any second if I slip up. And so for the next 20 weeks now, you can look forward to these deeper lessons as I've been reflecting on these last 20 years of what really brought me from that point A to point B. So I'm really looking forward to being here with you. And today, what I really wanted to bring up is you've now reached a point where what you have done in the past, even if it got you to where you are today, it's not going to get you to your next level. So the reason why things that you used to do that used to maybe make a difference, if they're no longer making a difference for you and you're still feeling really stuck, what I found for a lot of people is they're called to their next evolution, their next level, their next phase of growth. And what got you to your first isn't going to get you to your next. So when I look back and I look back on all that misery and pain I had for 10 years, I now would not change that. even at the time, I was praying, God, please take this away from me. Please help me get rid of this. I don't know how to get rid of this. Now, looking back, I wouldn't trade it for a million years. I wouldn't trade it. Why? Because now that I've approached it in a different way, food has become one of my greatest teachers. Binge eating has become one of my greatest teachers. And when I think about my relationship with food now, and my relationship with a lot of things, not just food, a question that has really changed my life is, what if this was happening for me instead of to me? I used to always ask, why is this happening to me? Why me? But why me? Maybe this is happening for me. And this is an outlook shift. It's a shift, honestly, from victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? I'm so helpless in this situation. That's victim. But if we look at it as maybe this is happening for me, then we can start to make meaning from it and grow. Now, some people say, oh, everything happens for a reason, which I mean, obviously, technically, yes, everything does happen for a reason because reasons are what cause things to happen. But people say it in kind of like a mystical way, like, oh, this was meant to be or this was meant to happen, which I also believe sometimes. But what I believe more than anything else is that we all make meaning from what happens to us. Right? We all create our own meaning. Like the exact same thing could happen to two different people, and they're going to extract different lessons or different takeaways from that. And it's going to frame the way that they look at the world. Like one example that a lot of us can relate to is maybe you had a difficult relationship and it ended in a breakup. After you have that breakup and you're going through that healing process, a lot of us will ask ourselves, especially if we're growth oriented people, what can I learn from this experience? What can I learn about myself, how I handled this situation, what this means for the boundaries that I want to have for myself in the future, what kind of people I want to attract in the future. And we start to adapt our actions and our thoughts based on how we want to grow from this, where somebody else may not learn the lesson and just keep repeating it again and again. And their conclusion, what they learn, might just be like, oh, all men are terrible. Oh, all men are narcissists. Oh, all men are cheaters, right? Because they keep attracting the same kind of person as they're behaving in the same kind of way. So when I say sometimes we need to graduate from a lesson in order for it to stop coming up, that means we've learned it, at least to some extent, and then we've outgrown it. And now we have new lessons to learn or like higher levels of that lesson to learn. You get what I mean? And a lot of us won't learn what we were meant to learn. We'll just say, oh, well, that didn't work. So let me just try this. And it's kind of like shiny object syndrome. Like, oh, well, that diet didn't work. But, Heidi over here, she lost a lot of weight on this diet. So let me try that one. But we don't stop and pause and look at the bigger picture of what we're doing and if we're actually growing or if we're just running a million miles an hour in circles. And that's what I did for 10 years. Even when it felt like I was making progress, I would still end up where I was before or worse. And now it's not that there aren't highs and lows. There are, but it's more like a trajectory. Even if you think about how the stock market looks, like if you look at the trajectory, it's not just a line that goes straight up, right? There's little dips, but the trajectory is still up, but there's little dips in the up. And that's what I've found for me, for my clients. That's how it looks. And eventually what happens when your trajectory is always up, even though there's dips and you'll fall down, you'll have to get back up, you'll learn the lesson from that. But what ends up happening is your lows down the road are still so much higher than even your highs used to be. And that's what I found to be true for myself now is when I look back on my relationship with food 10, 15 years ago, the best it ever was, the highest high I ever had is so much lower than what my even lowest rock bottom would be right now, which is crazy. I never in a million years thought that would happen. But I needed to reach that point where I was at a loss and it forced me to think outside that box. So let's talk about that lesson with food. The first lesson is that food is not actually the relationship that you need to fix. And it sounds counterintuitive because you'll even hear me say, like, oh, I'll help you, heal your relationship with food, which I do. But technically, that's actually not the case because food is a neutral, inanimate object. So, for example, if you've ever said something like, the cookies were calling to me from the cupboard. The cookies, are they calling to you? Do the cookies have mouths that said, hey, hey, Katie, open the cupboard, we're in here? Can the cookies actually call to you? No. What is calling to you? What's calling to you? It's your own mind, right? It's your own thoughts. Same thing if someone says, like, oh, bread is evil. Is bread really evil? Is it because of what it does to you? Or are you being evil to yourself in your choices? And I know evil's a strong word, and I'm going to use that strong word because a lot of us, we are evil to ourselves in our choices. Like the way I used to treat myself with food, if I did that to somebody else, like any other human or an animal, that would be called abuse. But a lot of us, we do that to ourselves. It's an abusive relationship, but it's not because the food is abusing you. The way that you're treating yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way you respond to your thoughts, the way you respond to your body, all of this is a relationship of you and you. It's not really between you and food. Food is the mirror that shows us the relationship that we're experiencing with ourselves. So a lot of us, we go a million miles an hour in the wrong direction by saying, okay, well, cookies are the problem. So I just have to not bring cookies in the house and I have to make sure I avoid all parties that have cookies at them. And I can't let my husband buy anything that resembles a cookie. We'll go that route, trying to control the food as if the food is the problem. Because on the surface, it does seem like the food is the problem. And I tried doing this for 10 years. However, what's the real problem? Your own relationship with your thoughts. If those cookies are calling to you, it's not coming from the cookies, it's coming from your mind. So, this is the kind of work that's an inside out process. Everybody at first tries to change the outside. And we think that if we don't bring this in the house, or if we avoid events that have this, or we avoid people who trigger us like this, then we're going to be peaceful. But instead, what happens, it's not that we are peaceful and that all the cravings go away. Instead, what happens is we have to be constantly hyper vigilant about what might trigger us and where these foods could pop up and anything that might trigger stress. We have to worry about all of these things constantly. So we're never at peace. Not only are we never at peace, but then our world becomes incredibly small because now I have to avoid everything because I have to avoid any potential risk. So the lesson was never about the food itself. The lesson was always about your relationship with yourself, with your own mind, with your own body, these various parts of you. And this lesson is impossible to outrun. You cannot outrun this lesson. And I'll tell you a story because this is what happened. I went really to the extreme. So short background on me. Basically, when I graduated college, I studied a lot of different things at college. I transferred schools. I studied a lot in psychology, nutrition. And I also struggled a lot. I was struggling with a lot of compulsive behaviors, not just food, but food was kind of ever present. And even though I had learned a lot about nutrition and psychology, it didn't actually help me personally change. I knew a lot, but my mind was something that I still struggled with all the time. And so after college, much to my parents' disappointment, I actually received a scholarship to go back and get my master's. And instead, what I decided to do was go live with monks and learn from them because I looked at them as being the ultimate people of discipline. And I felt that living in an environment of discipline living in a space where I'd be forced every day to follow a schedule, to meditate. Like, there are no days off in ashrams. There are no days off. It is 7 days a week. You are serving all day long. You are not getting paid. Like, there is a lot to be resistant against. You wake up super early in the morning. You eat bland food. But for me, and this was my skewed perception, I thought that it would help me. Like, oh, well, they won't have things that would trigger me. So therefore, I'll be peaceful. And I had hopped around to different ashrams, different monasteries, different spiritual communities. And I had gone to like bigger ones that had 100 people who lived there. Then I went to some smaller ones, like one was at the top of a mountain that had four people. And I got dropped off there and they were like, watch out for mountain lions. See you at 5 a.m. for meditation. So I had lots of different experiences. But then later, I had found this organization that I really loved, that I still love very much, and some of my greatest teachers ever in the world have come from that organization. So I applied for their work study program, basically, where you work all day in whatever department they assign you to, and then you follow the daily schedule and the meditations and the scripture study and all of those things. So I apply, I'm accepted. And at the time, I was struggling with food a lot. And one of the things that I had romanticized in my mind about going to the ashram this time was, okay, well, the meals are going to be on a schedule. So I'm not going to be able to like binge eat at night. I'm not going to be able to eat all day. And it'll be good for me to have this structure, which was what I was always striving to do is how do I give myself as much structure as possible so I can't be left to my own devices and be out of control. So I thought that this would be really helpful for me. So I get on the plane, I arrive, and then the woman who's giving me the orientation, she says, let me take you to your assignment. And because this program was 3 months long. I ended up staying for like 7 years, but this program that I originally signed up for was 3 months. So I follow her and we walk into this little boutique. And within the boutique, it's a very small kitchen where like only one or two people could even stand. And there was all these cookies and muffins and ice cream. And they gave me an apron and started training me right away, and my job was literally my job was literally all day to bake and sell cookies, to bake and sell muffins, to scoop ice cream for people, because this was kind of like this ashram particularly also had a lot of tourists come. So people would come for cookies and, treats. And so my job was just to bake and scoop ice cream. All of my weaknesses, all within literally, this kitchen was so small, it was all literally within arm's reach. And this was me for like 6 hours a day. And I had asked to change departments. They said no. They said, whatever department we put you in, assume that you're meant to learn whatever lesson comes from that. And in that moment, it was one of those moments like wherever you go, there you are. I had read this book previously in college. It was written by John Kabat-Zinn on mindfulness. And the title of the book was Wherever You Go, There You Are. And the idea is you cannot outrun yourself, no matter how much you would love to. Wherever you go, if whether it's at the top of a mountain or isolated in a cave or wherever you go, there you are. And you will be dealing with the same mind, with the same body. And so this is why I say this change, especially when we want it to be sustainable, needs to come from the inside out. And what had gotten me to that point was not going to get me to my next level, to my next phase of evolution. And it's the same for you right now. Even if what got you to where you are right now served you at some point, and I'm not doubting it did, if you've been stuck and spinning your wheels and it feels stagnant and cyclical, that's a sign that you're being called to the next phase of your evolution. Because if that wasn't the case, then what you're doing now would work. It would. But what a lot of people struggle with, especially with food, is they look at it as it has to be this all or nothing thing. Like what I used to do sometimes, I would take my journal. It would be right before my last binge or right after my last binge. And I would write down I would say, starting on this date, I am never going to binge again. This date is going to be day one of all of my binge free days. And this is going to be my very last binge ever. And then I would sign my name to make it official and be like, okay, starting tomorrow, that's it. And this is a very perfectionist mentality, which I always grew up as a perfectionist. Like when I got a 98 on a test, I would bring it home and my dad would be like, what happened to the other 2 points? It's not that my parents weren't proud, but it was always, well, what was the mistake? So the focus was always on what did I mess up? What made it not perfect? So a lot of my mindset was it needs to be perfect. And therefore, I had this all or nothing mentality. Like as soon as I mess up, I'm starting from square one. So I carried this perfectionist mentality like, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm binge free and it's going to be my day one. And I didn't look at it as a growth process. It was just something that I needed to stick to. And that idea now in hindsight of I'm just going to make this rule and stick to it for the rest of my life. It's a very unsophisticated mentality. It's really an immature mentality, especially when it comes to eating, which is constantly evolving as we change, as we grow, as our body changes, the way we eat needs to evolve. So if I'm making a rule, I'm no longer adaptable. I'm no longer adaptable to situations. Now I have to be hyper vigilant. I have to always follow this rule perfectly, or it's all or nothing. I'm back to square one. Whereas if you have more of a growth mentality, like I talked about with the stock market analogy, like how the trajectory just kind of keeps going up, there are dips and sometimes there's even plummets, right? As the trajectory is going up, you're still going to have some small dips and you're going to have some big dips. The difference that I've seen in myself, but also clients who have been more successful versus others, the most successful ones, they don't look at it as, oh, I failed. Rather, it's I fell down and then I learned, which is in my eyes still a win. Because when we learn from something and then we become wiser, that's also a win. Learning is still winning. So it's basically you win no matter what. And I've seen this with my clients, like um, especially with binge eating, I have this exercise that I give my clients that they can do after a binge. And it helps them reflect on certain things to learn from the situation, like very specific things that I have them look at. And they'll usually send it to me and they'll say, like, here's what I came up with. If you have any additional thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So then I'll usually read it and I'll see a blind spot that they had right away, just because I've been doing this forever. So I can always see the blind spots. So I'll send them that. And also, I'll tell them, here's exactly what to do the next time. And then it'll be like this aha moment, like, oh my God, I never would have noticed that before. And then they get so excited about the growth because now they have a strategy. Now they have all the insight. They've seen another one of their blind spots. That's so much learning. And I can't even count the number of times people have said, I am so glad that I had that binge because what I learned from that was so valuable and I'm going to be applying it to everything else. So even though they had that dip, again, the trajectory keeps going up. And also that growth is so much more secure than trying to always be perfect and like, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like when you're genuinely outgrowing something and you genuinely are noticing, oh, I don't even have these types of cravings anymore, or I just saw this food and it was a completely neutral experience, whereas before I'd be thinking about it all day. When you have those experiences, it feels very secure and solid. Whereas if you're just trying to like hang on for dear life to follow a rule that you set for yourself, that feels very insecure. So the real shift here, it's not I'm winning or I'm failing. It's I'm winning or I'm learning. And that's a great mentality for success. And by the way, because I know some of you have been asking me, especially since I've been away, about my program. Um, I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but I did just want to say that some of you know that I've redone my program many times over the years, probably now 5 times over the last 8 years because I just grow so much. And even though the principles stay the same, every time I grow, I feel like I want the new version of me to be imparting these things. So I decided to basically re record every single lesson and like literally everything. Like I've redone every single thing in the program. I still have some odds and ends that I need to finish. So I'm not letting anyone in right now. I just want to finish everything because it's going to be like the greatest thing I've ever done. And I just want it to be ready, but I will let you know when it's time. So if you want updates on when it's ready, feel free to just join my email list because I always tell my email list everything first, but I will for sure let you know when it's ready. So anyway, circling back to that question, what if this wasn't happening to me, but what if it's happening for me? That starts to open up the new path. Do you see why? Because now it's not about sticking to something, it's about growth. Because if this was happening for me to learn something, to create a healthier relationship with myself, then the old ways of what I was doing is no longer going to work. I'm being called to a new path to serve my new phase of my evolution. And this doesn't have to only be for food, by the way. Apply this to everything. Even recently, I've been having a very tough time recently. I haven't talked about it publicly yet, but I will right now. So my our dog of 13 years, passed away 2 weeks ago. It's still hard to talk about without crying. Um, but this experience, obviously, if I were to just say, "Oh, why would this happen?" I mean, it's his life, it's his path. It was his time. But for myself, one thing that I took away from this experience, and one way that I did create meaning for myself, and I'm not saying that the grief isn't there. The grief is very much there. I feel it in my heart. I'm getting tearing up now. I feel the grief in my heart every day. But one of the things that I took away from this experience, especially that first week of grief, in the past, what past Katie would have done, literally, I just would have laid in bed and binged. And every numbing habit I had, that would have been what I did. And I would have been beating myself for eating that much, but also saying, yeah, but I need to because of the grief and all that. This time was different because even though I felt it very deeply, I made it a point to stay in my routine that helps my, mental, emotional, physical states. So I still meditated every morning. I still did my breathing practices every morning. I went to the gym every day. And if I was on the treadmill and I started crying, then that was it. I would just be crying on the treadmill. And I would cry for a little bit and then it would pass. And then I would go do my pull ups and I might cry during my pull ups, but then it would pass. Um, and I'm not saying that this is how everyone should handle grief. I think it looks different for everyone. So I'm not putting this as like the ultimate. All I'm saying is I knew that for me, this was something that I wanted to grow in. Whereas in the past, I would have harmed myself, done things that were physically harmful for me. Now, in my grief, I was doing things that were physically healthy for me. Didn't erase the grief, but it was a different relationship with myself. Whereas before, it was like when I'm down, I basically kick myself more. I do things that are even worse for me. Whereas this time, I was down and I was doing things that were supportive. So basically, what that showed me is that I am now a support system for myself. I'm somebody who I can trust to take care of me when times get hard. Whereas before, I could not trust myself to be that person. Like, even though it was painful, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to show myself that I can depend on me, that I can trust myself. I can trust myself to be that support system. So you can apply what I'm saying here to truly any area of your life. But if food is the area where you feel the most stuck, this is the light I want to shine for you. So here's really what I want you to take away from this episode, okay? Number one, what you have done so far. Maybe it got you to this point and maybe it served you to a point, but it's not working anymore. And that's not because you have failed or that you are a failure or that there's anything wrong with you. This is because you're being called to your next level. You are being called to your next phase of your evolution. And what got you to this point is not what's going to be what gets you to that next point. You have outgrown what you've done. That's why it doesn't resonate anymore. That's why it doesn't feel aligned. That's why it's hard to stick to. You have outgrown that way of thinking. You have outgrown that way of being. And now it's time to step into that next path and that next version of yourself. And these next 20 weeks where I'm going to be showing up is going to help you do that. Number two, your relationship with food is actually just a mirror of your relationship with yourself. Okay. Your relationship with yourself is being reflected through your relationship with food. So by trying to just change the food, change what's available, change what you buy, go on different diets, follow different rules, inject yourself with whatever, these things are not going to touch the core of why this keeps happening. How it will really change in a sustainable way is from the inside out. From the inside out. And we cannot outrun this. Wherever you go, there you are. So, my question that I want to leave you with again, what if this was happening for you instead of to you? What if this was a blessing in disguise to guide you to one of the greatest lessons of your life? So, that's what I'm going to leave you with so far. But know that a lot more is coming. So if you want more, there's three things you can do. Number one, follow the Outgrow Binge Eating podcast. If you haven't clicked follow, press follow or the little notifications bell so that way you get the new episodes twice a week. Number two, go to my YouTube. Just type in my name, Katie Papo. There will also be additional little mini lessons because what I've found is a lot of times when we hear, even if it's a similar concept explained in slightly different ways or different examples, it just helps it click better in the brain. And a lot of this is rewiring, like how Einstein said, in order to solve a problem, we need to do it with different thinking than what created the problem. So this is going to help you step more and more in to that new way of thinking. And finally, number three, sign up for my email list because that's where I give things that I don't give anywhere else. So you can go to katiepapo.com/resources, and I'll be sending you all of this stuff there so you don't miss anything. I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you something to think about, and I'll see you in a couple days. Talk to you soon.